Before we get started, give this video a big thumbs up. And if we can get 10,000 let's go!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Modern Faith Unlimited. I am one half of the dynamic duo of this podcast, William Quinn.
And I would be William Henley. How are you doing tonight, Quinn?
I'm doing great, William. It's been a while. It's been a little bit about a month since we did a podcast, but I'm ready to get the ball rolling again. And we've got a lot of stuff we got to cover tonight, and I'm really excited about what's going on in the world right now. And let's just talk about it from a Christian point of view. What do you think?
Yeah, so there's definitely been quite a few... in the past month, quite a few news stories that have happened. And we have not touched on them for very specific reasons. And the reason why is because they are emotional, they are they're divisive, and it's almost like if we comment on them, just kind of feel like it's going to be from, just this emotional reaction, and just afraid may say something that I may regret later.
Exactly. And I just want our goal, especially my goal, our goal, especially when we did this podcast, we want this to be a positive podcast. We don't want anyone to listen to this podcast and think this is going to be gloom and doom, we're in trouble. I never wanted that to be a part of this podcast. I wanted to bring hope, enlightenment, and positivity in the Christian sort of way. The main reason being the hope we have in Christ. So if we just dwell on issues all the time, we'll acknowledge them that they're there. We are realistic, but we always want to, in turn, rotate everything back to Jesus.
Right.
So that was a main goal I had when we did this podcast. Let this be a place where people can come together and we can worship Jesus and talk about anything. Those issues will come up, but the main point is we want to lead everything back to Christ and Him being the answer to what this world needs today.
And I do just going to throw it out there. If you go to our website, under the blogs, we do have William Quinn wrote an article on George Floyd. And I also wrote a brief statement pretty much saying what I just stated. And and the reason why we did a blog post rather than a regular show is so that way we could put our thoughts in order and not regret something that we say later.
Exactly.
Also, some recent events, and I'm just going to touch on this. Once again, no conversation because it is divisive. Our church recently hosted Donald Trump and several black leaders for a conversation, basically a conversation as to how do we handle this. And whatever you think about Donald Trump or whatever, I don't want to get into that. I'm just simply going to acknowledge that this event happened. And our church was privileged to be the host of that. Also want to go into briefly, there's been other things that I want to have on future topics. And it may not necessarily be me and Quinn. I may bring in some other people to discuss this. And this is, we have SpaceX going on, and the first commercial space launch to launch people into space from a private commercial company. This is huge. This is... We've been being promised this for 50 years, so this is huge that it's finally happened. Also, there's been a lot lately about discovering exoplanets, and they're now starting to discover Earth-like planets in habitable zones around different stars. So that's definitely a possibility for a future show topic.
If I could, if I want to bring something up on that, on the SpaceX thing, that, you said, I mean, they've been looking at it for 50 years. I mean, I can remember, when I was in elementary school, we always look at have like these futuristic stories and textbooks about, what's going to be the world like in 50 years. And it's going to be like, I don't know, some people say it's going to be like the Jetsons or everything, not necessarily. But I do remember they did talk about, private space travel for like people want to go on vacation to the moon or to the Mars or like that. And I do remember something like that when I was in elementary school that was written in a textbook. So it's just so interesting now that's coming to fruition with SpaceX and everything. All these private companies wanting to go send people to space, and the thing is, even though they're not a big company like or organization like NASA, I mean, I just hope one thing that worries me is are these vehicles that are taking people into space, are they going to be as good enough quality as like something what NASA would take into space, like a space shuttle, or what happened in 1969. So that's the thing I'm skeptical about, really. But it's still fascinating to me, when something that I grew up reading in school is now coming to fruition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'm just excited about it. I was about 10 when the Voyager made the flyby of Neptune. I was 6 when the Challenger exploded. But I've always been just fascinated in space and science and technology. And in fact, yeah, I'm in seminary right now. I've been called into ministry, but right now I'm in IT. I'm fascinated with science, technology. This is kind of, it's like, I mean, other than ministry, it's my passion. So definitely something for a future episode.
Cool.
Something else is back with the Katy interview. I'm still working on that video. Every single time I get to work on it, a new issue comes up. And the thing is the video it's bad enough that something needs to be done to it, but it's like it doesn't seem like it's that bad. And it's like every single time a new issue comes up. So this isn't confirmed, but I have talked with Katy about the possibility of re-recording the interview.
Okay, just the interview or just the interview?
The interview, yeah. Next time she comes into town, possibly have her come over to the studio and re-recording it. So.
Okay.
So. Okay. That's a possibility. I'm still gonna see if I can get what we have recorded done. But you gonna get on to tonight's topic? Main topic? Tonight's topic I wanted to talk about is about just exhaustion. And I think we have done an episode before about burnout and stuff like that. But yeah, tonight's episode is about exhaustion. So
and then they bring up a Red Bull in there. We're not endorsing that. Just I should have just said generic energy drink. But if you're watching on YouTube right now, you'll probably saw the little symbol of it. But we're not trying to endorse it or anything. Just to let you know. So but that's exhaustion is It happens, and I think we can update now, especially with what's going on in the world now. Just exhaustion mixed with anxiety and frustration. That's like a bad mix, and I just look at that as something we need to just stop and go to God and just see what He wants us to do in these times. they can be good things if you just go to God and just, see what he wants us to accomplish through this time.
Yeah, I get that. It's like, so school ended for me, I guess back first week of May. And it's just like after that, it was just like this, uh, just, and actually gonna read a story about that later. I'm so jumping ahead, but
That's okay. That's all right, man. You're
yeah.
good.
So wow, this is like right in my face. Okay, let's. Okay, well, that's extreme close up. Okay, so the thing is I was actually even looking at the possibility of taking a semester off from school. I mean, I was just
Mhm.
so overwhelmed and stuff. But I went ahead and I pushed through the spring semester. I had to take the second semester of Hebrew. And by the grace of God, I made a B in that class. And I think I mentioned that on the last episode.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but then there's so much stuff that I wanted to get accomplished this summer and stuff. And uh, actually, I wrote this show script 10 days ago. And 10 days ago, I was so tired, I could barely carry on a coherent conversation. And so, if you can tell, something's definitely changed. I am engaged. I am, and it feels like after a month and a half, I'm like finally starting to feel rested. If you don't, uh, so if you don't mind, I would like to kind of tell the story about how this kind of happened. Um, so of course, like I said, it kind of started last year with this burnout, and I just kind of got to where I was begging God for a break, and um, I actually, and in retrospect, this is gonna, I know to some people this is gonna sound like I am making this up, but to my charismatic and Pentecostal friends, you'll get this. So God spoke to me, and because I said, what it really feels like is I said, I just need the entire world almost to slow down. And what it, I was riding by. It was a Sunday, and I normally go to church on Saturday afternoons. So it was on a Sunday morning, and I was driving, and I looked out there at the park, and I just noticed that the park was packed with the Little League games and stuff like that going on.
Mhm.
And I just remembered so many conversations I've had with adults who, they're Christians themselves, and
Mhm.
but their kids have never set foot in church because the parents are always like, "Oh, we have all of this other stuff going out." And I said it almost feels like the entire world needs to slow down. And God said to me, almost like in a prophetic word, uh, he's like, come spring of next year, he's like, the entire world is gonna like slow down and stop. And man, that would take like some type of huge disaster or pandemic or something like that going on. And he said, just wait and see. He said, it's this thing's already started.
Wow.
So that was probably like right around like October, November last year. So that he said this to me. So of course, I don't need to tell everyone what's happened since. Everyone knows what's happened. But anyway, with school and stuff, my classes went online. and which was kind of a blessing for Hebrew because he dropped the weekly vocab quizzes, and then our final was open book, open note, open any
Wow.
resource you wanted to use, even Google Translate.
Wow. Whew. That's awesome, man. That was that's like the cool. I remember when I was taking my Greek class with at TKU. I mean, it was our quizzes and final were just we're in groups of we're in groups, and we worked on the quizzes and final together, and then whatever we got was everybody got the same. Everybody in the group got the same score, which was cool.
Mhm.
You know, that's I mean. It's not what we didn't. We learned everything. It's just different way of grading. That's nothing wrong with that. No shame in that.
Mhm.
Pretty much.
So yeah, with me, he said, the head of the department probably would not necessarily approve of the whole open book stuff, but he said his mindset was this is first year Hebrew. He said if you ever go up and read the Torah or something like that, he said you're not going to be translating real time anyway. He said you're going to be sitting here studying for a sermon. You're going to be hitting your concordance or whatever anyway. He's like, I want to be able to make sure that you know your verb tenses, you know how to translate, you know how to make sense of the text because, and this is going to shock some of the King James only people. Hebrew does not translate into English word for word.
Yep.
And so he allowed for this open note and stuff. So anyway, I mean things were just getting bad and mentally for me. I mean, I was so exhausted, so worn out. I pushed through the end of the semester, and then I just like. So, I want to. One of the things I've realized is that I'm not alone in this. Our pastor Robert Morris actually wrote a book about this called "Take the Day Off." This is out of the introduction of his book, "Take the Day Off." It says, "What does it take to reduce a grown man, the respected head of a large and rapidly growing enterprise with scores of employees, no less, to a weepy, bewildered, half-dressed heap on his closet floor? Surprisingly little, it turns out, under the right circumstances." So, at the time, Gateway Church, the church in Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area, it is my privilege, that's Robert Morris, to be the pastor of, had been in hyper-growth mode for years. We'd all pretty much been charging forward at dead run from the day we founded the church with only a small group of friends in a living room, but me most of all. In the early days of any church startup, the founder is not only the preacher, but also the business manager, operations manager, personnel director, and the custodian.
Yep.
Within a few years, I found myself preaching 5 or 6 times each weekend and leading a large, seemingly ever-growing staff during the week. At the same time, the increased profile of the church and some well-received books resulted in a steady stream of invitations to speak across North America and around the world. I felt obliged to say yes to many of these as I could. After all, I reasoned, surely the invitation wouldn't have come my way if God didn't want me to go and help those people. I presumed, often without asking, that every invitation was an expression of God's favor and blessing. I wasn't the only one in our household stretched increasingly thin. As the church grew, my wife Debbie found herself with more and more to do and more places to be. As it happens, my hitting the wall moment happened to coincide with her being out of town for a week at a woman's conference. On one fateful morning, in the middle of the week, I dragged myself out of bed early, my mind already whirling with the multitude of things that I needed to accomplish that day. and the precious limited time available for those tasks in between multiple meetings. Every item on my mental to-do list seemed important. So did the meetings that increasingly crowded my schedule. My practical instinct was to try to prioritize, but everything shouted with equal urgency. Everything seemed to vie for the label of top priority. After a quick shower, I headed to get dressed, opened my underwear drawer in the chest in my closet, and was greeted by a terrifying sight. I was down to my last pair of clean underwear. A surge of alarm hit me. What am I going to do tomorrow? There's no more underwear. As I pulled the last remaining pair on, I pulled myself together by assuring myself that I would figure something out later. After all, I had a whole 24 hours to solve this crisis. Then I opened my sock drawer. My empty sock drawer. I know it seems ridiculous, but that was it. That was the grain of sand that tipped the scales of my fragile physical and emotional well-being. That was the flimsy little hay straw that proved too much for the staggering camel. Sometimes, after months of silent snowfall, a single snap of a twig is all it takes to trigger the avalanche that roars down the mountainside. The tiny issue of no clean socks was that twig snap. A wave of deep sadness washed over me. I dropped to the floor and began to weep. Don't judge me. I was perfectly capable of running a load of laundry. I was licensed and duly authorized by Daddy to operate a Maytag front loader. Or alternatively, as a functioning adult in possession of a wallet containing cash, I was quite capable of stopping off at Target or Walmart on the way to the office and purchasing socks and underwear with my own money. There was numerous easy solutions to this problem, but in that particular moment, I was incapable of bringing any of them into my consciousness. Any solution, no matter how simple, constituted one more thing to do. My overburdened mind was under-rested, so were simply too weary to choose one. I was essentially frozen in fatigue.
Let me just say this. That snippet from that book is so powerful. And it just shows at times we can think we have control over what we're doing in our lives, even though we think, even though it comes to that very top tipping point of when, it's going to tip over and we're going to lose half control. Up to that very last moment, we always going to think we're going to have control, but then God comes in and just tips it over, and then we're at our breaking point, and that's the time when we need to go to God and say, "Please rescue me from this busyness. Give me the peace. Give me the, that day off, that time of just rest that He wants us to have." And that's especially, I remember when Pastor Robert, had his health issues. He was just doing so much, and he had to realize that not everything was God ordained. He had to get that revelation. Just it's okay to say no.
Right.
I go through that too myself in that life. There's things I want to do, absolutely. But, we have to go to God first and see if this is going to bless him or curse him, or it's going to curse us. He doesn't want us to burn out.
Right. And I know in this book, and I'm not going to read it, but it said that it took him 60 days on sabbatical before he started to feel normal again. 60 days of straight rest. And I'm not quite to 60 days, but here's the problem: is it's like I take Sabbath. I always make sure that I have at least 24 hours of rest in a week. Yet, still, I just got to the point where I was burned out and exhausted. And I'm so glad I didn't take any summer classes this year. I want to point to something in the Bible, and it is from 1 Kings 19, and most of you, most people know this story. So what had happened in this story is Elijah had just confronted the prophets of Baal, and so there's this huge victory on, what was it, Mount Carmel? I think it was Mount Carmel.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me lying, but
okay.
But anyway, I want to read. I think it's something that a lot of people misunderstand what is going on here, and I want to read this and give you my interpretation of what's going on here. So 1 Kings 19, I'm reading out of the New Living Translation. It says, when Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. So Jezebel sent this message to Elijah. May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you killed them. Elijah was afraid and fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. Then he lay down and slept under the broom tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, get up and eat. He looked around, and there beside him was some bread baked in hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank, and then he laid down again. Then the angel of the Lord came and touched him and said, get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead of you will be too much. So he got up and ate and drank, and the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. Then he came to a cave where he spent the night. So I do want to read the second part of this story here in a minute, but I want to touch on what's going on here first. So a lot of people, and it even says this, in verse 3, it says, Elijah was afraid and fled for his life. So a lot of people, though, think that what follows this is also because he was afraid. It says he sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord, he said. So I think, people think that he's afraid for his life, and he is. But you also have to remember, he just had this huge spiritual battle. He is exhausted, physically, mentally, spiritually. He's had this and you've been in ministry, you can relate to this. When you are pouring of yourself out, when God is working through you and stuff, when you are done with that task, you are exhausted. And I think this is where Elijah was. In fact, I'm actually going to splice in a brief clip of the movie Constantine, where Constantine had just had this spiritual battle, and he has a bit of exhaustion.
Jesus. Constantine, what?
Twins.
Jesus. What?
You were twins.
What did you say?
She killed herself.
What?
And she's dead for it.
How is this possible?
I need to eat.
So, okay. So, this is kind of what I'm seeing is Elijah's not suicidal or anything like that. He's exhausted. He is spent. He's tired. And this is kind of where I was back in May and the first part of this month. It's like I was exhausted. I just wanted, it's not necessarily suicidal or stuff, but it's like I was just done. It's like I needed rest. And so this is kind of where I'm thinking that Elijah was at, is he's just exhausted. And I want to point out kind of what happens this. So he gets to the cave, and it says, "But the Lord said to him, 'What are you doing here, Elijah?' Elijah replied, 'I have zealously served the Lord God Almighty. But the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too.' And God said, 'Go out and stand before me on the mountain,' the Lord said to him." Okay, I want to point out here before I get into the next bit is that Elijah had just had this conversation with God. God said, "What are you doing here?" Elijah replied, God said, "Go out and stand before me on the mountain." It then says, "As Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. And the wind was there in an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire there was the sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And now a voice said, 'What are you doing here, Elijah?' And again Elijah replied, 'I have zealously served the Lord God Almighty.'" So here's what's amazing about this. Elijah had a conversation with an angel. The angel tells him to get up and to travel 40 days. Elijah travels these 40 days to a cave, and he talks with God. And then God tells him to go outside and wait, and Elijah goes outside and waits for God to talk to him. It's like, this is how exhausted and spiritually spent he is he is waiting from this word from God when he's already had it twice. It's like, This is how exhausted the guy is. So, and this has been kind of me. I'm to the point where I'm like, God's been here and he's been answering my prayer for rest all along. And I just needed to get to a place mentally. Well, Elijah, he traveled for 40 days. This was, yeah, he was physically working, but spiritually, he was resting for 40 days. He was not, and so I'm thinking this is kind of, what's the date? Oh gosh, it's been about 40 days for me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hey, so it might be prophetic. You never know. I mean, 40 days. Hey, that may be a sign God is giving me good rest. That story you're talking about, it reminded me of this Bible verse. I can't remember. I was trying to look it up on my iPad when you were doing that story. It was I did a 2-7. I don't know if you probably never heard of the 2-7 series. Probably not. But when I was at my old church before Gateway, that was like a really big discipleship Bible study we used to do called the 2-7. The first book, one of the Bible verses we had to remember was I can't remember what it was, but it was something like it's a verse about having a way out, um, having a way out. If you're in a bind, having a way out. I can't remember what the verse was, but I have to look at it and see. So I tried to look at it when I was on doing the story, but it just didn't come up. So it just reminded me of that verse a lot, of God providing a way out when we need it, and I think that because of above your situation, especially in Pastor Robert's situation, when we have that in that bind and we're in that trouble, God will provide a way out. And if it means having a rest for 40 days, so be it.
yeah, that's such, yeah, great advice. I know, I'm finally, like, I know people, I think even you were asking, like, just like a couple of weeks ago, it's like, so what's the update on the Katy episode? And I'm just like, I don't even want to think about it. It's like,
Which I completely
yeah.
understand.
And
I completely understand,
now I'm at the place where I'm like, okay, I can start. I'm actually started to process, kind of thinking, okay, what's going on here, and trying to put together in my mind how to fix this. So,
Gotcha.
I still think it's fixable, but you know what? If we have to re-record, we have to re-record. But the point is I was at the point where it's like I didn't even want to think about it.
Sure.
So I'm taking a vacation next month, and which it's gonna probably shock a lot of people, especially if you're like in some place like Seattle or California or New York that's still under strict lockdown. And I feel for you guys. We're kind of open. I'm going to be going someplace that's still kind of open. I'm going to be spending some time in Northwest Arkansas, and in some time in Nashville, and some time in East Tennessee. And
sounds good.
Especially want to see the Ozarks, and I want to see the Smoky Mountains again. And these are places I can go and not be around a lot of people, and but there are places I can travel to because these states are open and stuff right now. So that being said, the Smoky Mountains National Park is the most visited national park in the U.S. But
there's got to be some quiet places there, I would think.
Yeah. So just gonna get away, enjoy some time alone, visit some friends, and I don't necessarily know what I'm going to be doing in Northwest Arkansas, but I'm leaving a Saturday after work, and so about 5 hours, will put me into Northwest Arkansas about 9 o'clock at night, and basically it's a good place to crash for a couple of days before heading on out to Tennessee.
Sounds good. I hope I wish you the best on your vacation, man. I wish I could take a vacation myself right now, but I just don't have that luxury right now, and as far as my job goes. But just keep working. I should have that one day, pretty much. So, Do you have any final thoughts you want to share tonight, William?
I guess I guess I'm gonna put this out there for everyone is if you haven't taken the chance over the past couple of months to slow down, do it. And yeah, we've made adjustments with working from home and stuff like that, but I'm sure there's probably still people out there who's just they're they're worried about stuff. They're anxious. They're especially if you have kids at home. You're probably trying to entertain the kids and stuff. And man, just take some time and just rest. Go out to the lake. Go spend some. Unless you're in an area where parks aren't open, just take some time and reconnect, and mainly just slow down for a bit. And that's going to be my final thoughts.
And to piggyback on top of that, William, I just want to say to any believers out there in Jesus, if you feel like you're having too much to bear right now as far as life in general, just work, a mix of work and school, and just maybe if you have kids at home, if you feel like it's getting ready to get too much hectic, just stop, take some time, and just spend some time with God. Let Him show you the direction He wants you to go as far as maybe taking a break, or just let Him give you direction on how to handle even the smallest parts of that big bind. Just that's why He created rest. That's why I created the Sabbath, so we can refresh, recharge, and make sure everything gets taken care of during the rest of the times. That's why the rest of the time is blessed if we just take that time off.
Yeah. Yeah, just so totally agree. So, yeah, so that's my final thoughts. You have any final? Well, I guess you just gave a final thought.
That was mine. Well, let me go ahead and wrap this up. Let me get to everybody that's listening to this right now. Let me give you our social media outlets. Facebook is Modern Faith Unlimited. Great page there. We check on that all the time. Twitter is at Modern Unlimited. Instagram is Modern Faith Unlimited. And then also we have our website, which is modernfaithunlimited.com. We try to do blogs when we can. I will try to do one. There's one topic I'm looking at doing this week. I will post this week on the blog, on the website. And just if you're any fans out there, just tell your friends about it. We love to get this podcast and a website and everything we're associated with Modern Faith Unlimited out to the masses. So, with God's help, that is. And anything else you want to add, William?
No, I think that's it. I'm ready to say goodnight.
Well, for William Henley, I am William Quinn. This is Modern Faith Unlimited for this time. Everybody take care and stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.